thanks for joining. If you're new here, I'm Wendy and this is Nina's Jewels. My husband and I buy things at garage sales, flea markets, thrift stores, just about anywhere we can find things to sell online and flip for a profit. If that's content you're interested in, stick around. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do so and make sure to hit that like button. Today's video is going to be what sold for the week of June 11th through 17th. Unfortunately, this was the worst week of sales for us for the entire year. There were many factors that influenced this, but the main thing that caused this was that we were out of town this week and our store was on vacation. So there really wasn't much we could do about it. But we did have some really good sales this week, even while we were out of town. So let's dive right in and you can see what sold for us. The first thing that sold was a Dynex TV remote control. We got this at a local thrift store in a big bag of remotes. We paid 27 cents for this, and it sold for our full asking price of $12.99. Next up was a vintage book. It was called Knowledge Through Color. It was from that book series, Knowledge Through Color, and this was the book Astronomy. It was a vintage paperback book from 1971. We got this from a curb alert where everything on the side of the road at this particular house was free. And I'll link the video above where we went over everything we got in that curb alert. Almost everything we got from that curb alert was space related. And so this was one of the items. And this one sold for $9.99. And then we sold like a big lot of space related books. And then we picked out the ones that were more valuable on their own. And we've sold a few of those here and there. And then we also found some textbooks and things like that. That was definitely worth driving over and picking up. Next up was another remote. This one was a Techniques remote. This Techniques remote sold for probably the least expensive Techniques remote we've ever sold. Most of the time when we sell Techniques remotes, they sell closer to like $25 up to like $75. But this one only sold for $13.58 on offer to buyer. But Techniques is a great brand of remotes to pick up because they usually sell really high and really fast. This one did sell really fast. I don't know, maybe I had it underpriced, but it sold really fast and we were happy because we had only paid 90 cents for it. So that was still a great flip for us. Next up was something from the B-Stock Costco palette. It was a Bowers & Wilkins pair of wireless headphones. These sold for $65.68 on offer to buyer. We had paid $47.18 approximately for each item in that palette. There were about 75 pieces in that palette. And I will link the video above and in the description box below so you can see the whole experience, because the per item cost is not as important as our overall cost on that palette. So that's a little bit misleading when I say that we paid $47.18 per item. I really think that as far as palettes go, you really need to look at the overall picture on that. The bad news on this item is this is the one and only item that we've sold from that palette so far that we had an issue with. And even though we very, very carefully tested each item and made sure that they were saved back to original factory settings, when the buyer got this, they stated that it still had 2 other user settings saved on it and that it was dirty. So I'm not sure if this was an oversight on our part or if this was the buyer trying to get money back out of it. Typically we would ask the buyer to send the item back to us, but in the instance of this palette, we just, if this was a higher priced item, we definitely would have had them send it back. In the instance of this palette, we are kind of wanting to wash our hands of it, so we offered the buyer a 50% refund. They were happy with that, and we were happy with that too. So we gave them the 50% partial refund, said, we're glad you're happy. I blocked that buyer, and that was all said and done. Typically, that is not something that I would offer, but this palette's kind of been a headache for us, and I didn't want to continue the headache. Next up was a very valuable remote control that we found in a bag of remote controls at our thrift store. And it was a Pioneer DVD Laserdisc karaoke machine remote control. So it was a super specific, rare, hard to find remote control for a really specific item. And I listed this remote control for like $75. We ended up doing an offer to buyer for $56.18, and we had only paid 27 cents for this remote control. So that was a great deal on that remote control when we had only paid 27 cents for it. I would definitely be on the lookout for Techniques and Pioneer remote controls because they are the two biggest money-making remote controls that we've seen out there. Next up was a super great flip. We found this pair of shoes at a garage sale. This is a very, very valuable, not as well known high-end brand of shoes called ATP. And this was a very small size, so I wasn't sure how quickly it would flip, but they were a pair of black leather sandals in size women's 5.5, and they sold for a whopping $107.98 on offer to buyer. And we had paid just $3 for them. So I was super excited about that, and we did not sit on those for very long. So if I ever see that brand again, I will definitely pick it up. And it is not a brand I was familiar with at all. I just took one look at them and thought, wow, these look expensive, and comped them, and indeed they were. So we picked those up, and I was glad I did because they flipped fast and we made great money on them. Next up was a pillow pet. And if you've watched any of our videos before, you know that we pick up pillow pets all the time because they sell really well for us. They are randomly a bread and butter item for us. People buy them every time we pick them up. We don't pick them up if they're in really ratty, dirty condition, but the good news about a pillow pet is that they are 100% machine washable. So if you do pick one up and it has, some stains on it that you think might come out in the washing machine, you can spray treat those and wash them. But they do get kind of worn out and matted looking once they've been washed too many times, so we don't pick them up if they look like they've seen better days. But if they look like they can be cleaned up and they're in good enough condition that somebody might want them, we definitely pick them up. A lot of them are retired. People are looking to replace the ones that have gotten ratty, so we pick them up and sell them all the time. This one was one of the large original size ones in a white polar bear. We picked it up at the Goodwill bins for 67 cents, and it sold for $32.99, which was our full asking price. And this one did take a little while to sell. I had priced this one a little bit higher than some of our other ones because I guess the polar bear was a little bit harder to find, but it did eventually sell. And we have no more original pillow pets in stock. We have sold out of all of them, so we're going to be on the lookout for some more. Next up was a women's 100% silk paisley skirt by a brand that's local to our area called Harold's. We just picked it up because of the fabric content since it was 100% silk. We paid just $1.35 for it, and it sold pretty quickly for $14.98. We didn't feel like we could ask too much for it because it wasn't like a nationally known brand. At least I don't think so. I think it's just a local brand. Next up was something we found in the Goodwill bins. We picked it up because it was new in package and just interesting, and it was called a popcorn rock. It was an aragonite crystal that you put water on and then it grows into a crystal. So kind of like a science kit that you would do with a kid. That we picked up for 67 cents and it sold for our full asking price of $12.99. Next up was a Banana Republic men's button-down shirt. It was a pretty coral color, 100% cotton Oxford shirt. This we got at a thrift store for $1.89 and it sold on best offer for $15.45. Next up was a vintage 1990 gunned stuffed animal. It was a bear. It was missing its dress, but it did have its original hang tag on it. This sold for its full asking price of $16.99, and we had gotten it at a thrift store. We paid $1.61 for it. Next up was a Hallmark pink ceramic cross that said on it, "A child is a celebration of God's love." And it was something that you would hang in a child's room or a nursery maybe. It had a little ribbon hanger on it. We got this at the Goodwill outlet. We paid 92 cents for it, and it sold on best offer for $18. Next up was a two-piece set of rubbed bronze bathroom accessories. This was just something that we had redecorated our bathroom. We had taken these items down and put up new ones. So we sold the old ones for $23.98 on offer to buyer. And these were in our house when we moved in, and we just changed the decor. So we had no cost associated with these. Next up was a pair of women's Cole-Haan boots. They were black leather and they had like a Sherpa fleece lining. We got these in the Goodwill bins. We paid 67 cents for them, and they sold on offer to buyer for $26.38. Those sold pretty quickly and out of season, so that's unusual. Next up was an interesting sale. This was something that we found in the other business that we own, which is a custom picture frame shop. This is just one of those things that was laying around. Who knows how it got there? It was probably just something that was collected along the way, or a former customer or somebody, left in the store a long time ago, and then, it never got used. Or maybe it was something that at one time we had hanging in the store as a calendar, and then took down and thought it was too nice of a piece, or kind of, artwork looking, and didn't want to throw away. This was a 20-inch by 27-inch 1996 large cardboard calendar. It had like cowboy art on it, and it had the artist signature on it, but we could not make out that artist signature. So I don't know who the artist of the cowboy art was, but the calendar was branded with O'Grady Containers, which is a Fort Worth, Texas based company. So we put all of that information in the title, and that sat in our store for a really, really, really long time. And then eventually we sold that to someone who was local to this area and did a local pickup. And he said that his grandfather worked for O'Grady Containers and he was collecting items from O'Grady Containers since his grandfather had worked there. So anyway, we arranged to do local pickup with him, and he purchased that item for our full asking price of $42.99. So that was an interesting sale, and a good example of why you should always put the company name of the item on there, because that is something that sometimes people are specifically looking for, that they might be trying to collect that item because of that company name. Next up was a Tarzan clamshell Disney movie. It was not sealed, it was used. We had tested it and it worked. This was something we got at a garage sale. We paid 57 cents for it, and it sold for our full asking price of $8.99. Next up was a really pretty gilded antique book. It was from the 1800s, and it was called The Poems of Gaith. I hope I'm saying that right. The Poems of Gaith, Goethe. And it was a hardcover gilded book. This we got at a garage sale for $2, and it sold on offer to buyer for $37.48. Next up, we actually picked up the bag of toys for this item because I thought it might be a vintage G.I. Joe, but alas, it was not. It was an unbranded army guy. So we listed it anyway, because we always list everything that we get out of the toy bags at the thrift store. I just listed it as a generic, unbranded, articulated, jointed paratrooper. And I thought, this item is never, ever, ever going to sell. But eventually it did sell, which is crazy, but eventually everything usually does sell for us. And it sold for $9.99, which was our full asking price. And we had only paid 14 cents for that. And, almost everything else out of that bag from that pickup has also sold. So, that just goes to show you that it's usually worth it to give something a shot anyway. We've definitely made our money back on that bag. It was worth picking up. Next up was a genuine OEM Nintendo Wii stand, or a dock for the actual Wii console. We found this in the Goodwill bins. We paid 92 cents for it. It did not sell for much. I probably would not pick one of these up again unless, it was just in a big bundle. And I probably wouldn't sell it again unless I sold it in a bundle. It only sold for $7.98 on offer to buyer. We did get positive feedback on it, but, probably not really worth it. Next up was something from the B stock lot. This was a pair of Samsung Galaxy Bud Pros. These sold for $57.58 on offer to buyer. We got positive feedback on these. Like I said, our per item cost on the things in that palette were $47.18, but we are looking at the big picture on that palette purchase because if we looked at the per item cost, it would just depress us. And last but not least, I always go over the collectible cards from my husband's personal collection that sold. This week was a record for us in collectible card sales, but not a record in a good way. A record because we only sold one card. This is the first time we've only ever sold one card. So here's the card we sold. We sold this 1993 Upper Deck Fun Pack baseball card for $2.79. And that's it. We just sold that one card, which is crazy. We normally sell at least 5 cards. I don't know why we only sold the one card. Probably had tons to do with our store being on vacation, but still, that was very unusual. So that wraps up our sales for the week of June 11th through 17th. It was not a good week for us, our worst week of the year, in fact, but the good news is that sales have picked up a lot. They have just gone up and up and up and up and up since this week. So I'm excited for you guys to watch future What Sold videos because we have some exciting sales to show you. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure you hit that like button and please make sure you're subscribed. We will see you guys next time. Bye.